through this process, I got interested in amplification. And first, simply because I wanted to get I was noticing that my guitars were not getting played out on stage. And I wanted to advance my guitar making career, and to have people know that I made these guitars. Thought it'd be a good idea to figure out some way to amplify them so these guys could actually use them. Well, my first real exposure to amplification was Ry Cooder. And I really have Ry to thank for my being here today telling my story. Ry was one of the pioneers of amplifying an acoustic guitar. And at the time he was using a magnetic pickup and a lapel mic and a rack of equipment the size of a refrigerator to make it all work. And he swore and swore and swore at that stuff. You know, I'd be hanging out at his house and we'd be tweaking stuff, and it was just, my predominant memory of the time was what a nightmare it was for him to tour with this thing, because he wanted it to sound like the guitar sounded, and he was a brilliant guitarist. He was touring in Japan a lot at the time. So one afternoon I get this call from Ry, and I had just finished my second guitar for him, and he was working on this album called Bop Till You Drop, which was the very first commercial album recorded with digital equipment at Warner Brothers in 1978. So I get this call from Ry. He says, "Lloyd, can you come down to the studio? There's something I really want you to hear." I said, "Cool, okay, I'm there." So I go down to Warner Brothers and walk in the studio, and there's this guitar leaned up against the case, and he takes me in the control room. He says, "Come on in, I want you to check this out." So here we are at Warner Brothers, big studio, these huge speakers on the, in the soffits in the Studio A at Warner Brothers, and this incredible sound system, and he plays me the first track from just the instrumental track of his guitar from Bop Till You Drop. And I was blown away. It just absolutely floored me, gave me goosebumps, and I turned to him, I said, "How the heck did you record that?" And he said, "That's what I wanted you to hear." He said, "I didn't mic it. Remember I told you that I thought Takamine might be making a copy of your guitar?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, that was it." I said, "That wasn't my guitar that I saw out there?" He says, "No, that's a Takamine copy." And I just went, I was stunned and shocked, and at the same time the most excited I'd been in a long time, because I'd heard this sound that was incredible. Takamine chose to put this pickup system in this guitar as kind of a test, and the thing was incredible. So I left the studio and I went out and sat in it was Nadine's car. It was Nadine's old Mustang, my wife's Mustang. I remember sitting in the car under this tree, and I can still see the cracks in the sidewalk from the tree, and it's like it just happened an hour ago, sitting in this car trying to assimilate what had just happened to me. And here it was, the most incredible thing I'd ever heard, and maybe one of the biggest insults that I'd ever had also. And so I was alternating between pissed and fuming, and intrigued and excited, and so at that moment I just said, "Okay, I'm in. This is it." So this gave me an opportunity to launch into the pickup business. So a few months later, Ry and I went to the NAMM show together and met with the president of Takamine, Mr. Harade, and real gentleman. And so I remember sitting out in this patio discussing this whole thing with him, and so basically I had, through this little bit of a negotiation, I had convinced him to send me pickups for my guitars, because I only made 10 a year and I wanted a way to amplify them. So I just asked him if he would send me some pickups, and And he says, that's all you want? I said, yep. And he goes, you're kidding. No, that's it. So he sent me some pickups, and I took one of them apart, and I just went, you gotta be kidding. That's all it is? And little did I know how sophisticated it was. I loved the Takamine sound. I thought it was phenomenal. But it was kind of big, and you couldn't retrofit it to other instruments. So I just had the idea, well, what if I could shrink this somehow into something that you could drop into a saddle and would give you the same sound? And so basically the LB6 was constructed out of that. I couldn't find a place to buy the piezo crystals, so I used to buy Barkus Berry hot dots and scrape the epoxy off of them till I could get down to the crystal, and then I would use those crystals to build the pickups out of. But after about a year, I came up with the LB6, which was the unitary saddle that has the pickups built into it, and I got enough positive feedback from people that I kept going with it. It wasn't the most natural thing you ever heard, but it had a sound. And James Taylor still uses it, Vince Gill, Genesine's using it, Kathy Mattea. There's just a whole bunch of people that love that combination of good sound and bulletproof. And it's reliable, and so that's how my pickup career got launched. We had our first child, our daughter Jennifer, and while I was learning how to build this pickup, I pretty much stopped working on guitars and taking in repairs, and I had some angry customers, and within a couple of years we'd found ourselves, well, broke would have been a nice thing. We were actually pretty much in debt, and from my career in art, I had a bunch of really, really good, expensive, valuable prints that I was auctioning these things off. I'd taken, Sotheby's had this auction, so I'd send these prints and stuff. So I sold my cello, I sold my bows, basically I was selling anything but the fixtures, just to have money to buy piezo and keep going. And so on our daughter's first birthday, I kind of had to face the facts that I really needed an income again, because we couldn't afford to even buy her a cake on our first birthday. And that was a real wake-up call for me. So within a couple of weeks, I found myself a job selling cars, which was like a totally weird thing for me to do, because I was like Geppetto the Woodmaker, man. When the phone would ring, I'd just jump out of my skin, and I had no social skills whatsoever. And so here I was, sink or swim, let's learn how to sell cars. And so I eventually worked my way up to mediocre or above average at that, probably working 50 hours a week in the car thing, and then 30, 40 hours a week making pickups. And Nadine and I would, New Year's Eve one night, Nadine and I were making an order of pickups at 1 a.m. And so just burning the midnight, burning both ends of the candle and building the business. So after about 4 years of this, we had enough business to cut the car thing loose, and we'd paid off our debt, and we had some savings, and it was really actually hard leaving the car business, because it was like the first time in my life I ever had any money, and I was making pretty decent money back then, and it was actually a whole lot of fun. So I was like, oh man, what do I do? What's next? And so basically, my wife and I had become Christian about a year before that, and so we said, okay, well, let's pray about it, see what the Lord would guide us to do. And so after about 3 days of fasting and praying, it's like it was kind of obvious that we needed to start our business. And I went, oh no, this is going to be really hard, but okay, I'm going to try and be obedient here. And so I made this deal with God, right? As if you can make a deal with God. So I said, okay, I'm going to do this, but you're going to have to help me, and I'm going to do this. I am not going to do this in the worldly way. This business has to be based on Christian principles, and it has to work your way, or I ain't going to have anything to do with it. So it was kind of an experiment in faith for me at the time. So Nadine and I we took a deep breath and jumped and moved out of Los Angeles up to where we currently live now in the Central Coast in California, and started our business in a garage, and just kind of went from there.